Hello, everybody, and welcome to the new year and this week's episode of the State of the AI Union. Today, I'm joined by Steve Baker, who is co-founder and CEO of VendorSage. Steve, thank you for joining. He's coming all the way from New Zealand. I'm so very excited to have him. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself and VendorSage?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for having me, Laura. I really do appreciate it. One of the co-founders of VendorSage, and the way we like to view ourselves is the execution layer between business intent and software reality. So we started off as a SaaS management and procurement platform, and we've shifted more into tech strategy execution as a co-pilot as well.
So to clarify, that means that this co-pilot helps us understand like usage of all of the tech that an organization has procured and is currently using. And you can ask questions about usage, adoption, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the way I like to, the analogy I like to use is a business will have goals that it's trying to achieve. It'll hire people to achieve those goals, give them job descriptions, KPIs, and then it'll manage them. We do that, but for the software you use to run your business. So we're continuously looking at the capability of the tools, the health of the workflows. And then off the back of that, what we're trying to do is figure out how to bridge the gap between your current set of capabilities to wherever it is it needs to be to achieve business goals.
Okay.
So think of it almost as a set of eyes and ears on everything that's happening inside your tech stack and where you can take it from to where it needs to be.
And that's actually like one of the things that's like very important right now, as we see tech stacks are consolidating. There is an increased pressure from CFOs and finance teams to reduce costs, consolidate, etc. So measuring and being able to kind of see where our money is going and whether we're getting the returns is really interesting, I think, for me.
Massively, yeah.
You also mentioned that this is the execution layer between goals and software. And I wanted to ask, now that companies are adding more AI tools,
Mm.
why does that strategy to execution gap become wider instead of smaller?
It's a good question. I think to like preface that, it's important to understand the problem, which is that businesses still fundamentally don't really understand how to do a good job of buying, managing, and adopting software. We surface business challenges, and then we're really good at picking out tools. We don't really know what happens off the back of that. And in the nature of like how I look at software companies, if you think of like your product roadmap, there is a cohesive direction that everything is going in. You wouldn't have a product owner unaware of where certain parts of the feature roadmap are going. But with our tech stacks, because a tech stack is basically you can view it like a product. You to not know what direction certain parts of the tech stack are pulling in is it's a pretty dangerous space to be in, especially when you're looking at how fast we're rolling out use cases across entire orgs at the moment.
Yes.
And so I think like the way I like to think about it is that AI tools don't really shrink the strategy to execution gap. They just multiply decisions. So classic SaaS was really easy to govern because it had clean signals, licenses, adoption. The renewals are really straightforward, but with AI, you get tools popping up everywhere, writing, research, support, sales, code, and each one of those changes a workflow in a slightly different way. And the governance on the top of that is very much not in place at the moment. There's no framework for execution and governance in any real sort of capacity. It just normally ends up being led by one or two champions in the org, but it's sort of just have at the moment. Which I think is leading to a lot of challenges in adoption. I think there was a stat that I saw the other day that was 90% of AI initiatives fail. SaaS sat historically at about 70%. And so 70% of software initiatives or implementations didn't end up doing what they were supposed to do. And we still haven't learned from that. And it's compounded into AI, which is actually just a distribution mechanism in most cases. And so we're still seeing the same problems. It's a lot easier to adopt and get it in the hands of people, I think is what's changed. But we're focused very heavily on the how much question at the moment. We're trying to figure out how much things cost or how we're going to manage the spend. And that's not really the right question to be asking. From my perspective, I think the right question to be asking was, can we get it to do what it's supposed to do? But yeah, most teams don't really know how to get to that part. So they default to what they know how to manage, which is spend. Um, your spend only goes out of control once you've really ended up at a place where there hasn't been any sort of thoughtful focus on how you build the stack in a cohesive way, I guess.
Yeah. You know, you said something, a couple of things really interesting to me. The first one that you said was AI actually just gives you more decisions to make. And I think that that's kind of fundamentally the difference between doing AI right and doing AI without direction, right? It's you want to use AI in a way that is actually changing the way that you're doing things so that it's making it easier. But if you're deploying it in a way that's not thoughtful, then you actually end up with multiple ways that you have to look at it, more decisions to make, and this is why those AI projects failed because we actually haven't thought about or been thoughtful about like, well, what do we want it to accomplish? And how are we going to do things differently
Mm,
to be able to get that done?
yeah. Same problem with SaaS, right?
Right. Right.
The difference is with AI, sales reps can now say, "What do you want it to do?" They're still just looking for a way to get you to say yes to something.
Right. Right.
And so we get to see how some of the fastest growing companies in the world make the choices they do about the software they use to run their business. And the alarming thing for us a lot of the time is when they're doing these cross company evaluations for like OpenAI or Ocean's Agent or those sorts of things. What we're seeing is one or two roughly designed use cases. Like that's the full extent of where a lot of like some of the fastest growing companies in the world are deciding, yep, we'll go and figure out the rest from there. So there's no understanding of what good looks like, what success means once it's where it's supposed to be. There's no plan to roll out and implement, no ownership or anything like that. And that's the problem we had with SaaS. It's moving twice as fast or three times faster to get to roll out with AI. And I think that's sort of what's compounding those issues.
Yeah, and also you mentioned that spend only becomes an issue when actually people start adopting it. And with AI, you are supposed to use more AI. That is kind of like success, but then it can go out of control. So actually, this is my second question here. It's around how do finance and IT teams, I guess more on the finance side, like how do they now evaluate software um, with this AI lens and it
I
being
think
everywhere?
I think this is the broken part. So finance and IT are typically they try to position themselves in forward-thinking orgs as enablers, but they're not. They're gatekeepers to budget and to implementation, right?
Uh-huh.
What's really changed with AI is you actually have to start to break the silos down to really understand what's happening. Before you could say we're just going to implement a CRM, it's going to do these five different things. Now, what's happening because of the inability to go like I can only make this agent do this one thing. You end up deploying a chat GPT as an example, and you blink, and within a week or two, you've got 200 or 300 different new workflows deployed. So what we're seeing as a shift is a much more collaborative evaluation cycle taking place where it's not just sign off from finance and IT. There's a real careful look at what is truly being enabled and what good is going to look like. So yeah, I think the ones that are doing a good job are just taking that extra bit of time, not really leaning into the hype as much, not being as worried about the FOMO piece, and going through much more careful evaluations. I think the last thing I'd call it as well is where we're seeing successful deployments of AI is when there are proofs of concept completed first. So predefine what you're trying to achieve, go and test it, roll it out, and see if you can actually do it. Measure it. If you want, go through another PFC again at a scaled up phase, and then off the back of that, you've probably got a good basis to make a smarter choice about what you're doing.
Who do you think should lead that AI initiative for a company wide type of thing? Is it
I, I
this?
actually think it should be a chief of staff, right? So what we're trying to really do with AI, the point of it is efficiency, and we're trying to operationalize things, make them move faster. Workflow improvement really is what it's changed everything in that respect. So working backwards from strategy, bridging the gap between what are we actually trying to achieve as a business this year? What are the capabilities we need to achieve that? And then what is the current workflow health? And what happens if we improve workflow health from X to X? Does that move us towards where we're going faster? What you don't want to do is end up in a silo making a choice. You need to have visibility over how information moves through the entire business.
So someone that's like really cross-functional and has a good idea of, connecting the dots across the business, that
Yeah,
kind of person. Okay. Um,
yeah.
where we used to measure ROI for software was really in licensing, seats, and adoption, and then we moved to consumption. More recently in the last few years. But
Mm,
now with AI and having these multiple use cases, and a lot of them are also, in my opinion, AI is supposed to just help us become more efficient. When when that value is not as direct, how should companies think about measuring it, and how does like vendor sage like help with that?
mm. I think it's really difficult to think of AI like a product. It's probably measured more like an intervention. So you think inputs, outputs, outcomes, second order effects. With SaaS adoption was often a proxy for value. With AI adoption can be misleading. So if you think about, you know, there being 100 different people active this week on your ChatGPT instance, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Whereas with your CRM, if you saw 150 calls logged, 180 support tickets completed, so on and so forth, those were good outcomes. So yeah, like someone can generate a lot of activity without actually creating better outcomes, and AI is really good at that. You can get distracted really easily because it can do everything. So when we talk about what good looks like, what our co-pilot actually really prompts and forces people to move towards is figuring out what is the one thing? What's the thing that's going to move the needle? How are we going to improve this workflow's health? And how do we shape and mold your tech stack, the parts of AI and the parts of SaaS that are relevant to those workflows to getting healthier and ultimately contributing towards capabilities that enable businesses to achieve their goals?
So what I'm hearing actually is that we should measure the we should measure the value of AI by the business outcomes that we are already measuring, and whether we're doing more or less same than what we were doing before the adoption of
Yeah, we
the
we we encourage companies to pick one workflow at a time and measure it sort of end to end. So your inputs, your usage signals, just enough, like just to normalize it. Then from there, your outputs, your drafts, your suggestions, your summaries, outcomes off the back of that. So cycle time, resolution rate, conversion rates, defect rates, how you would manage a person, but just started to think more of AI as a person, I guess. Yeah, it's a very different way to approach it than what you'd be doing, I guess, with SaaS.
I like what you said. Think of AI as a person, because at DevRev we always think about AI as a teammate. We try to use AI as a teammate sort of language, and I think you're echoing exactly that.
Yeah, and like that example I gave at the start, right? I actually do view software as a part of the team. I always use the analogy of what every single person in your business is supposed to be doing. They have a job description, they have KPIs. You manage them, you work them towards improving on what they should be doing for the business. Um, you should be doing that with all software, but especially with AI. It requires constant tweaking, adjustments, and making sure it's moving towards where it's supposed to be going.
Right, right. Okay.
Living,
Okay,
breathing.
last question, and then we'll get to like some fun questions here. Um, what advice I think would you give to sellers that are trying to sell AI right now, and how would you also position them for maybe having that continued success story, since
Mm.
90% of AI implementations are feeling right now.
This is the same thing that happened with SaaS. I keep going back to that example, but um, the best reps in the world, and I probably am a part of 1,000+ evaluations a year. The best reps in the world are the ones that really do get obsessed over the success part. Um, you'll see those reps go on to become enterprise reps for the likes of your Salesforces and OpenAIs and so on and so forth. They get really, really obsessed about their customers' outcomes. And to do that, it means you have to understand your customer, you have to understand the workflows. Um, and it's no different with AI at all. I think a lot of reps are making a lot of money at the moment because they're banking on the fact that whoever they're selling to has been told, "I need you to invest in AI," and that's it. Like that's the that's the full brief. But that's contributing to fears around this bubble popping because we're seeing these churn numbers that we're seeing these fail rates that we're seeing. But there's this very small circle that are getting it right, and that actually does start with a very very thoughtful vendor relationship, I believe. There's vendors that are taking very careful care to make sure that things are rolled out correctly, rather than just growing at all costs. Um, and those use cases that we're seeing deployed across our customers are incredible. Like it's completely revolutionizing their businesses. But yeah, it typically does start with a rep just taking that extra bit of time to get to know and understand their customers' businesses.
Can you give us an example actually of a customer that's doing this really well?
In terms of the reps
The
doing that
use case,
really well,
yeah. Or the use case of what they're doing really well and that's sticking for them.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think the ones that I've seen really get this right have probably been Glean. Yeah, so we saw that the team at Glean in a couple of different evaluations take the time to slow down quite a bit. Really, really understand like what would move the needle correctly. And Glean has the ability to do endless amounts, right? But what they really focused on trying to understand was, if you look at the capabilities required to move the business towards where it's trying to get to at the moment, what are the 3 or 4 workflows that if we 10x, um, what are those? How do we show quick wins there? How do we actually prove out that that is what we are capable of delivering on really easily in a POC? Get that done. Get that done right up front. It removes any objections really quickly, and it builds a lot of trust right up front, so that you typically see a lot of hesitation and caution towards going big right at the beginning, especially with SaaS.
Mm.
But yeah, those bigger full cycle deals from an AI rollout perspective, they typically start small with a couple of really key wins like that.
Awesome. All right, Steve, thank you so much. Let's pivot to learning a little bit more about you. And you're from New Zealand. Which city in New Zealand, by the way?
Auckland,
Oh,
so right at the top.
okay. I've been there one time in my life. Um, but I think one question, we don't see as many founders from New Zealand. And I wanted to ask, having grown up in New Zealand, how do you think this has shaped the way that you think about leadership or business, especially compared to Silicon Valley culture? I know some of your backers are out here in the valley.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We're in New Zealand. I think we tend to do things a little bit slower paced than what the rest of the world might typically do, or might be perceived to be that way. I definitely think New Zealanders are a lot more cautious and less risk adverse. Whenever I have had the privilege of working with companies based out of the States, you see a mentality that enables people to put their hand up to do anything, right? There's very much a pick me, give me the chance to prove myself, and that doesn't really happen as much here in New Zealand.
Hmm.
So for me, that was an opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities to do that, to be able to put your hand up, so much more so than you probably would get anywhere else in the world, because it's just not as competitive here. Um, yeah, and I think that in terms of the leadership style that I've been able to build is really allowed me to focus on seeing the opportunities for each and every part of my team. Taking that little bit more time just to understand where the opportunities sort of sit. And yeah, I think what's really cool about growing up here is you learn that there there are a lot of different ways that things can be done. We have this saying in New Zealand called number eight wire mentality, which is basically we invented number eight wire down here, which is like a steel wire about yay big, and it gets used to do just about everything. Its original purpose was for fencing, but
Oh, wow.
yeah, we there's just a million different applications for it globally. But yeah, we sort of have built ourselves to be a nation of number eight wire thinking. Yeah,
Super practical.
yeah, practical, outside of the box. I think something else as well we see down here is a lot of purpose driven, like a lot of purpose driven work. So we not everything's just about growing for the sake of growing. A lot of us are very mission driven. We do things because we want to do them because they make the world a better place. And as a result of that, there are like some truly outstanding companies sort of coming out of New Zealand, and most of those, a lot of the sort of the Series B and above, have ended up coming on board with us because of the growth that they're going through internationally. Yeah, and it's just it's a really different sort of way of thinking and working.
Yeah. So moral of the story, if you're hesitating to be an entrepreneur in the US, move to New Zealand and you'll have lots of opportunity there. Um,
Yeah, for
okay.
sure.
Next question is I learned about a new phrase called tall poppy syndrome.
Mm,
And for our listeners, that is where people who stand out for their success, ambition, are criticized or suddenly cut down, kind of like tall poppies in the field.
mm.
The field gets mowed so that everybody gets is even. Tell me about whether that has made you more cautious or grounded, or if that worries you at all.
I think it used to be a real problem in New Zealand. As of late, our tech ecosystem has really sort of to right itself. There's a lot of support. Everybody's sort of willing to put a hand up and do what they can to help. And I think that was sort of just a result of the immaturity, one from a business and two from an ecosystem standpoint in this country. In terms of how it shaped me, that's a good question. I don't think it's really ever bothered me too much. I care really deeply about the problem I'm solving. Um, I'm happen to be working on a really big problem. It's it costs the world $5 trillion a year. Wasted spend on software, wasted opportunity, and that's all I've really ever worried about is working on things that I care about. If I'm doing that, yeah, I don't know. It's never really occurred to me what other people think about it.
Yeah, that's great. So you kind of have your own, your own confidence and self assurance about what you're working
Yeah.
on. I like
I
that.
think so long as I am able to solve the problem well, that's all I've really cared about in founding this business. The thing we built everything on top of was being able to do what we say we can do. And so very much like a customer success first mentality,
Mhm.
which was, I guess, where my career started. And yeah, it's sort of yielding itself in the results. Like we average out 1,200% ROI in the first year with our customers. We've net revenue retention of 147%, 100% logo retention. And I think that's just sort of down to the way we think about how we approach things, which I would say is also very Kiwi. It's like we like to sort of think about trust, do good business.
So, okay, lightning round. Flat white or long blacks?
Long black, but with cream.
Long black with cream. Okay. What about jandals or trainers?
Jandals, definitely at the moment, it's summer.
Okay. And all black or black caps?
Ooh, All Blacks. Definitely the
Blacks.
All
There
Blacks.
you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Last question here to wrap up. When you travel and you come home to New Zealand, what's the first thing that you do to reset yourself?
Go to the beach. Um, yeah. I'm surrounded, I'm lucky enough to have, I think, 9 or 10 beaches within about 10 minutes drive of my house. So, yeah, it's definitely where the heart is. We're very lucky. New Zealand's an island nation. So they're just, if you drive for an hour in any direction, you'll probably end up at a beach.
Awesome. Steve, thank you so much for being with us. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell the audience before we close out here?
Um, no, I think that's it. Really enjoyed the conversation today, Laura. Thank you so much for your time.
course. Thanks for being on the show. To all listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, a comment, and so that we know we liked it and we can give you more content. Otherwise, Happy New Year, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much.